Hey there everybody, welcome back again. I'm not planning on making this a habit, but it's been really busy lately and we haven't been doing a whole lot. So I've been mostly being able to record at night. And this next thing I want to talk about is a movie that I've been wanting to see for a long time. So a lot of you may not be, well, in the know when it comes to my personal hobbies and things I've always been interested in, besides like what I've shown on the channel here, like comics and everything else. I've always been utterly fascinated by physics and by space. And one of those people that I absolutely love, well, let me get to that in a second. I love it so much that I actually even wrote a comic book about kids that travel through time using Einstein-Rosen bridge as like kind of the basis and foundation, set to the backdrop of the Manhattan Project, where these children's grandfather worked on the project and was directly working with Einstein and directly working with Robert Oppenheimer. I love the story of the Manhattan Project so much. One of the characters in my book is a dog named Oppie. His full name is Oppenheimer, but they call him Oppie. So by now you probably guessed it. I'm going to watch Oppenheimer now that it's available to rent and buy at home. I really wanted to see this in theater on the full 70mm because Christopher Nolan is just a magician and I love seeing anything he created. In fact, Interstellar is in my top 5 favorite films of all times. So now that it's here, everybody's asleep, the turkey's starting to kick in for the tryptophan, it's time to finally watch and give my opinion on Oppenheimer. I am so excited. Like I said, I'm not going to make this a habit of making these type of films where I do my reviews and talk about these movies often, because there are far better channels to watch for that. Like our friends over at Late to the Party. Their videos are absolutely amazing and they probably have way better opinions and thoughts and knowledge on the subjects than I do. But this movie is something that I really want to talk about. So let's kick back, let's hit play, and I'll come back at the end to tell you what I think. But for now, Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer.
The whole hearing took a month. An ordeal. Oppenheimer still divides America. When they bring up Oppenheimer, yeah.
The movie just ended. And I have to say, Christopher Nolan did it again. It just, everything about the movie, it's so perfect from beginning to end. Now, am I going to say it's in my top 10? Not yet, but I might have to watch this 3-hour epic a couple more times. Because as I talked about earlier, I've always been extremely fascinated with, especially this era in time when it came to physics and research, and Oppenheimer specifically. As I alluded to earlier, I read a comic book for kids called Brief History in Time. It's about time travel, 2 kids trying to follow breadcrumbs left by their grandfather who's now wandering aimlessly through time. And I paid homage to Dr. Oppenheimer by naming the dog Oppenheimer in the book, and they call him Oppie. And all the things I've ever read on Oppenheimer, I never once read anyone actually called him Oppie, and they called him Oppie through the whole movie, which is really cool. But my opinion and my review. So first and foremost, this movie reminded me so much, as far as its aesthetics go, to another one of my top 10 favorite movies of all times, which is JFK, directed by Oliver Stone. Just the way they told the story going back and forth and have these certain characters playing certain pivotal roles that you don't really see until later on in the film or sporadically throughout the film. And just the way it was shot and the combination of black and white, color, the sepia tone, everything about it was perfectly done, and it reminded me so much of JFK. In fact, one of the things I thought to myself without ruining anything, I was like, I wonder if they're going to talk about JFK's involvement in this whole story. They kind of did it toward the end there, which is kind of cool. The other thing was, I got to talk about Cillian Murphy's character and the way he portrayed Dr. Oppenheimer. As I'm watching this, I just kept basically, I feel like I was watching a ghost of sorts. I felt like I was watching Orson Welles playing Charles Foster Kane again. The way he just took the character on, and he was this egotistical man in his own rights, but also suffered from everyman syndrome. Very similar to the way they portrayed Charles Foster Kane in Citizen Kane, where he was this man of great affluence and resources and power, and he was always the most intelligent person in the room, a la like Alexander Hamilton, the way they tell the story with Lin-Manuel Miranda. But at the same time, he didn't connect with what he was. He connected with more of what he thought he should be. And in this particular case, the way that Oppenheimer kind of had that everyman vibe about him, the way they talk about his womanizing, the way they talk about just him as a person, especially like with the unionization stuff during this time and era, it reminded me a lot of the way that Orson Welles portrayed Charles Foster Kane. That all being said, I also found myself, even though this is a 3-hour movie, I'm not exaggerating. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. And it wasn't so much the way that they progressed the movie through visualization, it was that soundtrack. That soundtrack just kept you on the edge of your seat, just always anticipation of something happening that may not be happening right away, but you knew was coming. The way that the music played the story, or progressed the story, was just as important as the story itself. It did not feel like 3 hours, I will say that much right now. And I love the fact that they dove deep enough in the actual story of Oppenheimer as a person, in conjunction with Oppenheimer, the congressional hearings and the board hearings, and also with the story of the Manhattan Project itself. This movie had everything I loved about Interstellar and everything else that Christopher Nolan's done. I mean, even Tenet, which to me was probably not his best film that he's done, but Tenet's still one of the best films of the last 10 years. Christopher Nolan, man, I hope someday, if my life is worth telling, you're the person that tells the story. And it's not going to be, sorry, spoiler. But if anyone can make it interesting, it's that man right there. So my final review on Oppenheimer is, why did I wait so long to see this? It was absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait to watch it again when I have another 3 hours to kill. Man, I might fall asleep watching it again right now. Hey guys, thanks for taking the time to watch a film with us and hear my review and my lackluster opinions that probably no one really cares about. But I will leave you with this last thing. As a child, I traveled to Washington, D.C. quite a bit. And there was a couple times that I can remember vivid memories of physics actually entering my life. And one of them was one of our trips to Washington. They actually had a full-scale model of an H-bomb on display in the American History Museum. They talked about the A-bomb, they talked about the H-bomb, and I remember my cousin Joseph and I, we kind of were like pretending to like knock on the end and whatnot. And I was reading all about it down there, and it talked about Oppenheimer, it talked about Enrico Fermi, it talked about, oh my gosh, I just blanked on his name right now. I just blanked on his name, but another physicist they portrayed in the movie. And I remember it came to life for me because it's something that required so much knowledge and science and education that literally changed the course of human history was in this thing that was about 3 times the size of myself at that point. It absolutely blew my mind. And the other part that made me laugh when I was watching this, and they started recruiting all the scientists, and they started going through like, the murderer's row of physicists of the day. I kept thinking about the movie Me, Myself, and Irene, where Anthony Anderson's character was like, Enrico Fermi is going to turn over in his grave.
I sees that, but what do I do with the electron? Can I bring it over here? Enrico Fermi'd roll over in his grave if he heard that stupid.
It made me laugh, and I just love how, if you're in the know, you take these elements of these amazing historical events and somehow intertwine them into just whatever the pop culture moment is of the time. Wow, there's a lot of memories came up watching this movie, and a lot of the reasons that I fell in love with this information was reiterated in the film. It was fantastic. I can't say enough good things. I'm really sad I didn't see it in 70mm now, but who knows, it'll probably make another venture back into the theaters at some point. So guys, thanks for taking the ride with us. Let's take another ride again soon. This has been Tommy's Tesla Tech and Travel Home Theater Edition. Bye bye everybody.